We're going to have the invocation. Hey, Jimmy, you want to do it? Okay. Yeah. Go.
Ready? All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We just thank you for this city, this state, and this county. Father, we just pray for each person that has decisions to make, Father, and provisions that need and positions that need filling. Father, give us wisdom and insight and discernment, Father, for these things, and keep them in the perspective that we should have them. Lead and guide us. In Jesus' name we give thanks. Amen.
Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item of business is a request from the Library Executive Director Adam Webb to delete a part-time position of Public Service Assistant, PCN 3008-0600-3224, and create a full-time Public Service Coordinator, PNC 38-0600-3258. The request for the annual salary for the Public Service Coordinator is $40,644.
Move for due pass.
Second.
Motion for due pass in the second. Any questions or comments?
I think the director's here if he'd like to speak to this.
Where you at, Adam?
All right. Yeah, this is just some moving around of some part-time salaries to full-time. Like anybody who employs people in Garland County, I'm having a hard time with employee retention. A lot of our part-time staff, they're limited to minimum wage and 20 hours a week per county policy, and I'm just bleeding part-time employees. So I think we've had 6 leave recently, and this is just going to be moving some money from part-time salaries to full-time and then being able to open a full-time employment position. The stated salary there is just the max on the wage and class scale. So if I get somebody who comes in off the street and they've got 17 years of public library experience and a degree, I can pay them what the top of the salary scale is, but it'll likely be lower than that.
Thank you. Anybody got any other questions of Adam?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm not on this committee, and it's unrelated to this. If you want to finish this, and then let me ask Adam a separate question, which would be appropriate for you.
Has anybody got any questions of Adam?
I'm sorry, repeat.
It doesn't regard this thing on the agenda here, just a question I had for him.
I had a question for Adam.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. Adam, I was just wondering, how difficult is it to find qualified employees to work in a library?
It's incredibly difficult depending on the position. We have IT employees who do frontline tech support for people in Garland County. We've got a team of 3 that do that, and they stay busy. They probably need 4. For librarians, you have to have a master's degree in library science to be a qualified librarian in the state. Very similar to school librarians in that regard. And we just don't get the amount of applicants that we used to. So we're really looking more at employee retention right now than we are recruitment. And I'm fairly certain we have a good candidate in-house for this position who's working part-time right now. So this will be more of a promotion kind of situation than just adding an additional person. Yes, sir.
You can hear you, Larry.
I just said it's not unlike what's happening everywhere else, whether you're in private industry or in government. So thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Jim.
If you're voting on this, I thought, yeah,
okay.
you go ahead and vote, and then.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? I had a motion.
'Aye.
Okay, opposed? There be none, we'll forward it on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Adam, hi, thank
Hey.
you. Back in '23, we had a board replacement, and we discussed, and there's some letters exchanged with the county attorney and so forth, about whether there should be a publication of openings for the public to respond. I think in May, do you reappoint or appoint new every May? Is it a May?
No, sir. It's July is when the positions come up for their first term would start, or their first meeting would be in July. So
Has the board discussed publishing those openings to the public?
this is really the purview of the county judge. He and I have talked about this because, he's the one who has to appoint. So, but we've talked about advertising the position, leaving it open for a month or so, seeing who applies. Of course, anybody who does apply to the library board, it would make sense if they came and took a tour of the building and talked
Sure.
with me so I could kind of let them know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, I think that's how we figured out that we would do
Okay,
that.
good, thank you, I appreciate it. And one other thing I'd encourage you to encourage the candidate to be present when they're being voted on, so that we.
Yes, sir.
they might
I
ask
did have
questions.
somebody come by, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and just said that they were interested in being on the library board, and I'd let them know that they would more than likely have to come to Quorum Court and
Oh, okay, thank you, appreciate
stand
that.
up here at the pulpit.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Adam, expand on that. What was their reaction when you gave them that?
Didn't seem to phase them.
Okay, just
And I don't
wondering.
think it's outside of the, realm of what people who are on different boards should be asked to do.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you, Adam. Any other business?
I'm gonna go to baseball practice. Y'all have good evening. Good night.
Thank you.
We have any other business? Okay, we're adjourned. I did too.
Well, you know what, I did see it, because I knew, but I just forgot.
I am told by the county judge it's 5:30, so we will call the Public Health, Welfare, and Safety Committee meeting for April 22nd, 24 into order. We've already had an invocation and a pledge for the HR department. Unless anybody insists, I suggest we just pass that over. We've done it once, and that takes care of it. So we're here tonight to continue discussions on the need for public safety, and we had heard last month from the Garland County Sheriff's Department and the 911 Center. Tonight, we hope to hear from Prosecuting Attorney's Office and the county judge, who had both indicated that they would have information to share with us tonight on this continued discussion. So is Michelle here? And good evening.
Wanted to make sure, did anybody have any questions of me, or? I wanted to briefly bring to everyone's attention, I've been blessed enough to be a deputy prosecutor here in Garland County since 1997. We won't do the numbers on that. When I was going back and looking through the history of our office, the last new employee that we had at the prosecuting attorney's office was in 2000. So we have maintained at the prosecuting attorney's office with the staff we have now for 24 years without any increase. That is totally attributable to the county. We have had an investigator that was created for the Drug Task Force through a Drug Task Force grant. It's a federal grant. And we've also had case coordinators, victim witness, based on the VOCA grant, which is also a federal grant, which the county is gracious enough to match for benefits. But other than that, we have had no additional individuals allotted to our office. And I think that it's no shock to any of you that in 24 years, the rate of crime here in Garland County, as elsewhere in the country and the world, is up. Our numbers are up, especially our violent and body crimes. Because of that, our number of trials are up. I had case coordinators go back and look in the past 3 years. In 2022, well, when I started, truthfully, in 1997, we might have 1 or 2 trials a year. In 2022, we had 11 jury trials. In 2023, we had 13. And as of April 22nd, we've already had 6. So we are well ahead of beating that number again this year. The main thing about our office is not only the climbing number of cases, but what goes into each and every one of those cases. When we charge a defendant with a crime, we have an obligation to provide the defense attorney for that defendant all of their case file. When I started in 1997, you might have a case file that had 25 pieces of paper. Now, and rightly so, we have body cameras, we have unit cameras, we have interviews, all of that recorded, all of that defense attorneys and defendants have a right and an obligation to. The state is pursuing a charge against them. They have a right to see what our evidence is. All of that takes a huge amount of manpower. Every trial, we have to put on body camera. We have to put on interviews. We have to put on videos from units. So as you can see, it's much, much more than it was in 1997 and 2000, and we are operating with the same number of individuals. So I brought it to the county judge and graciously asked that we be included in this. 2 case coordinator positions. Those case coordinator positions assist the attorney in trials. They assist the attorneys in preparation of discovery, obtaining it from law enforcement, and also providing it to defense counsel. So the county judge graciously added us for 2 case coordinator positions. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them to the best of my ability.
Expand a little bit and tell us what it is that you need to do. I'm bad about not turning on the mic, I'm
Fine.
sorry.
I am as well.
I would like if you could expand a little bit and tell us what it is your requirements are within the prosecuting department that are troubling you. That, in other words, what's the real difficulties that you're dealing with that you're asking us to answer?
Sure. And please stop me if you have a question or if I don't make something clear. Number one, the volume of cases has increased, not just in circuit court where felonies ensue, but also district court where misdemeanors ensue. I believe the county was gracious enough to add or help pay for staff for district court, dispatchers, individuals with the sheriff's department. All of that work comes downhill. All of the work out on the street, all of the work that comes to the courts, we have to prosecute that. So if an individual is arrested for a crime, it's up to my office to prosecute that beyond a reasonable doubt, if we can do that with the evidence. So that, in turn, requires that I have individuals that work at my office to do that. Luckily, the county does not have to pay for the attorneys. All of my attorneys are state attorneys, and by the way, the Arkansas legislature gave us 1 additional attorney spot last legislative session. So they see that there's a huge increase in crime in Garland County as there is around the state of Arkansas. So they have basically met that challenge by providing us additional attorney staff. We have 10 attorneys, including myself. But the office staff, the operating staff for my office is funded by the county. in the county alone, which the county graciously does. But there are numerous jobs that the individuals in my office have. Specifically, the case that we're speaking of here, these are case coordinators. These are individuals who basically, they file all of the charges, be it in district or in circuit. They go to court with the attorneys. They help the attorneys maintain a docket, which last year alone was over 860 felony cases. We're not talking about misdemeanors. That is in the thousands. So they maintain those. They prepare our case files. They run criminal histories on individuals. They copy everything in the file on these 860 cases, give them to the defense attorneys. They help the attorneys at the actual trial of the matters. They close all of those cases statistically. And then, yet again, a new trial comes up. So they each, right now we have 2 individuals that each handle about 430 cases. Those are my 2 case coordinators in circuit court. The numbers keep rising. The violence and the crime we see everywhere, the world we live in right now, is increasing. I want to give credence to my staff. I want to give credence to my attorneys, because I can tell you they have been working hard and they've been trying cases. And I think if you've looked at the newspaper, if you've heard the news, if you've read anything, looked on social media, they are working their darndest. And luckily for us, Garland County juries are coming through. If you will note, we had a rapist not too long ago that got 11 life sentences. And I've been so pleased with the verdicts that have been coming down. But my staff has been working tirelessly. And I think that the county judge will also tell you that we've dipped highly into overtime. That's the only way that I can get my work done. That's the only way my staff can help me get my work done. And I surely don't want them to go without being compensated. So that's the thing that these 2 positions will do. They will double my workforce in regards to these cases.
I appreciate
That answer any?
it. Does. Anybody else have any questions?
Not a
Chairman,
question.
I'm not
It's
on
my-
this.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Go ahead. Dayton?
Hey,
Hey, you had something?
I was just going to say, it's amazing that you've been able to continue doing the same work despite the increase in population, despite the increase in crime, which is obviously like you said, gets worse every day that goes by, and the fact that you and your predecessors have been able to operate without having any new positions as far as staff in 24 years is amazing, and I think it's probably about time that we give you a little bit of help. That's all.
Thank you.
That's
I
my personal
appreciate
opinion.
that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. We would put it to good use, and I know that the citizens would benefit as well.
Thank you. I think Jeremy had something as well.
Michelle, do you have an idea of what the annual salary would be on that, and maybe what the total annual payroll expenditure would be?
It's on the bottom.
Yeah.
Look at page 2.
I know that it's
Here, I don't
commiserate
think you got it.
with
I'm
my
sure.
case
Sorry about that.
coordinators I
It's
have
right
now.
here.
No.
$52,506 is the total with benefits, I believe.
Got it.
Where's that printout?
Perfect. Thank you.
And there would be no special requirement. Of course, we would like for there to be some knowledge of the criminal justice system.
You raised an interesting point just a moment ago in answering the question with regard to overtime, because it is my hope as we study this, as we look at these requests, that what we can do is to find a way to answer your needs in these various departments, and at the same time find a way to reduce our overtime commitments, because we want to spend our money as wisely as we can.
Sure. Yes, sir.
And it's always been my opinion, at least in corporate world, that overtime cost us a heck of a lot more than regular employees did. And that I was better off hiring people and taking care of the job then, rather than trying to think about saving a buck and then ended up spending a heck of a lot more.
Yes,
Because
sir.
I had short staff when I didn't need a short staff.
Well, and I think that's what brought the county judge to me, where we had a forthright conversation about that.
Very good. I appreciate it. Anybody else? I guess not. I appreciate it. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Judge, you had some stuff you wanted to introduce us to tonight, and if you would take it from there and kind of share that information with us, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that very much. I want to go back a little bit in history here and tell everyone how we wound up here. In 2023, the state of Arkansas decided to increase pay for their law enforcement officers, which started to drain our employment at the sheriff's office, at the detention center, other levels of law enforcement. We started to see a drain. Sheriff and the undersheriff at that time came to me, and we were nearly to a panic mode because there were so many people turning in notice, so many people going to the state. So if you remember last year, we went in and we reorganized. We came up with a lot of money to pay increased salaries to recruit and retain employees for our law enforcement, not only on the street, in CID, but also at the detention center. In the process, we removed 6 positions at the detention center to try to offset some of the costs. It didn't come close to getting it all, but it did offset some of it. Over the years, we've removed some positions. We've removed one at the mechanic at the road department because we've got newer equipment now. We removed an assistant director position at the landfill because Billy takes care of it all and doesn't need an assistant. Through attrition, the accounts payable person retired and we did not replace that. I absorbed those duties into my office. The stormwater office, there was a clerk there that handled paperwork and answering the phone, taking notes. Through attrition, that individual left, and we've got someone from ARPA that works in there now answering the phone, taking notes. The maintenance director retired last year, and I absorbed his duties myself. So I'm the guy that's up here on the weekend and got my hands in the water and everything else. So we've tried to save everywhere we could. I'm saying all that to say we have scraped and drawn up and tightened up everywhere we could, and we have not tried to not be frugal with the funds. But the position we were put in last year by the state of Arkansas continues this year. And in talking to some of the individuals at the state level, they indicate it could happen again this year for another pay increase. So what we wound up with is losing a lot of institutional knowledge from the sheriff's office. I think the sheriff and the chief can back me up on that. We lost years of institutional knowledge to the state of Arkansas. And so we started hiring younger people without that institutional knowledge, and they are trained as best they can be. We offer the highest level training. That man right there makes sure they have everything they need before they hit the street, but they still don't have the institutional knowledge that we had with the ones before. So they don't know the key people in the community. If you're in Buckville and you're having trouble at a dispute of some kind up there, you don't know that Joe Brown lives down on the corner and he knows everybody there and you can reach out to him and get some help from him. You don't know those things. So we have a workforce now that is much younger, and green is the word I would use. They do a very good job. They do absolutely everything they can, but we are taking a risk each time we send one of those individuals to a call, domestic of any kind of disturbance. Sending them out alone, you may have a crowd of 20 people there, and they may all be family members, and we all know how that works. You get there, and the family members all turn on the deputy once they get there. But we're in situations now where we're having to take reports over the phone. We're getting some 25, 30-minute response times. If you get an individual on the north side of the county, on the north side of the lake, and it's 45 minutes up there no matter how you look at going up there, and if he gets in trouble and we try to get someone to him, it's going to take a while, even if we bring somebody out of the village who's not even with our department. We've even gone so far as to have the coroner help us cover calls and help us back up our deputies on calls just because we didn't have anyone else out there. So as I told you the last time we met, I'm putting this out here to the Quorum Court. I think everyone in here supports law enforcement. I don't know of anyone here that doesn't. And not only myself, but the sheriff and the dispatch center and the prosecutor are all asking for help. Now, when you get all of your public safety individuals reaching out to you for help, there's something going on. Last Friday, we had 2 individuals was all we could get in the dispatch center to work on day shift. 2 individuals. That means they're in there, They're having to make sure warrants are right. They're having to answer the phone. They're having to dispatch a fire. They're having to answer the phone because somebody just got a question. They're having to answer another 911 call. They're dispatching. Wait a minute, somebody from Mountain Pine wants something. They got to go through that. 2 people in there. You can't control people's illness, and you certainly can't stop them from taking vacations. So although we do everything we can to keep a good staff over there, you wind up in similar situations frequently. Not too long ago, the end of 23, in Pulaski County, or maybe it was Little Rock, they wound up with an answering machine on their 911 line. How many people in here would be pleased if they called 911 in an emergency and it was an answering machine? Well, that's what you got in Pulaski County, and we're not going to get there. We are not going to resort to that. Last year when we did those pay increases, you can go back and check the minutes, the recordings. I told the Quorum Court at that time that the general fund could not support law enforcement in the manner that it needed to be supported in. And I'm still at that point. Recurring revenue will not support recurring expense. I have had our comptroller work this page down as much as she could. The chief has went over it, supplied a bunch of information to her. We're all the way down to the gas in the vehicles that they're going to drive, what it's going to cost us. I and the prosecutor, the dispatch office, and the sheriff are going to ask the Quorum Court in May to impose 1 meal. 1 meal is all it's going to take to provide the 10 positions at the sheriff's office, the 4 positions at dispatch, and 2 positions in the prosecutor's office. That's $20 on $100,000 worth of property. The average home in Garland County, according to Zillow, is about $241,000. So that's about $50 a year that it would cost to have this. Homestead credit went from $375 in 23 to $425. Most people won't even realize that there's been an increase of 1 meal. So that's really all I've got. If anybody's got a question, I'll try to answer it. The sheriff is here. Both of my fellows from the dispatch center are here. They can answer it. But, we've had a couple of situations in the past month. One was a human trafficking situation that we had to have our TAC team go into and spend about 6 hours out there trying to get an individual out safely. We did, made an arrest, got that individual out safely. We had another one that was a home invasion last week, had to send our TAC team out there, and it basically puts us out of business when we have to do that. But this is human life we're talking about. It's not that we want to frill somewhere. This is human life. When we ask day after day for all these individuals, the people in that office right there are the first ones to get the call. They're the first ones to hear the terror in somebody's voice, and they try to stay on the line and talk those people down while they're dispatching. But we're asking these people to do this every single day of their lives and not providing them what they need to help. I can promise you that the prosecuting attorney, either one of those gentlemen right there, the sheriff, Chief Elrod, none of them would be here asking for it if they did not absolutely need it. And when I got on the Quorum Court in 2005, and Larry Williams can attest to this, I was told, we know we need more people on the street, but we just can't afford it. Well, I think it's time we get to where we can afford it. I'm not going to have the blood on my hands of asking a young man or a young woman to go out on the street, protect me, protect my sister, my brother, my family, and not provide them with what they need or backup. So that's what I've got. I know a lot of people out there disagree with me, but we've got all the numbers in the packet. We've got several packets up here if y'all want one. We have got it down to where we can do it all with just 1 meal. And to me, asking for 1 meal, which is basically $20 on $100,000 assessment, is not much to ask when we have human life involved. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate it. I know that I have a couple of questions of some of the heads of the department, but I want to start with Corky, if you don't mind coming up. I'm going to ask you to repeat something. You gave us this last month, but the judge just mentioned this fact that you had a Friday where you only had 2 people picking up calls.
Yes, sir.
How does that impact you? What happens? Because what do you normally operate with there?
So we try to have 5 on days, 5 on swings, and then we'll have folks on regular days off or PTO time. So we do not ever want to get below 3, and way too often that happens.
So you're
Same
being
thing on
asked to
swing.
do 100% of the work with basically 40% of the employees there.
That's correct.
Okay. What's that impact like? I mean, from the standpoint of how citizens react, or can you speak to that? Because you're probably not on the phone talking to them. You probably hear it secondhand, but
I get the complaints the next day because people are on the phone for what seems like forever. And when they're in the worst situation of their life, 3 minutes, 4 minutes can seem like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. They don't always get the answers that they want from us. And so we get screamed at, we get cussed at, we get threatened. We've had the sheriff's office come up and walk our shifts out at 10 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because everything that goes on in the world with law enforcement and with prosecutors and with the world as it is today, it all gets called back in right there. And when we answer the phone, it's our fault that everything in the world is happening. And so there's the cussing, there's the screaming, there's the threats, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on. It plays on everybody's psyche, if you will. And we're not in the business. Our dispatchers are not in the business of being out handling issues on the side of the road, but we're having to handle them on the phone every single day. And when we can't give that resolution, well, then the complaints come in, and no one cares that we can't do anything about that. We're not law enforcement. We're not the fire department. We're not anybody other than a phone answering service, if you will. But that's where it all starts. That's where all the fault is. That's where all the blame is for not getting your situation handled quickly. It's all right there with us. And so, I mean, you can imagine if everything that happened in your neighborhood fell on your shoulders, what it would do to each of you. And you definitely want some neighbors to step up and help you with that. And that's what we're asking for here, is some help with some folks that can step up with those calls and shorten those durations and help where we can.
I appreciate it, Corky.
Yes,
Do
sir.
any of you don't have to be on this committee to ask a question or to participate in the discussion. You're a JP and you have a right to participate. You simply can't. When it comes to the vote on whether we send this recommendation up to the Quorum Court or not, you can't vote on that, but you can certainly take part in the discussions. So does anyone sitting here tonight have any questions of Corky to help expand our understanding collectively of what he needs and why he needs it?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a
Brown,
question.
go ahead.
I wasn't able to attend last month's meeting when this was first presented, so it may have already been discussed. So if I'm coming in on the backside, I'll apologize ahead of time. So there's been talk in the past about consolidating the 911 center with the city of Hot Springs.
Yes, sir.
So help me understand maybe the dynamics of that. If it happens, I guess when so many things are in play there, do those individuals stay for city only? Do they get integrated to take city-county calls? Just didn't know what that would do. Is this to try to take care of an immediate need, and then if that happens, then maybe not all of the individuals that are currently in the 911 center, say at Hot Springs, that comes with us retains a job? Just kind of, so many things are floating up here.
I understand, and that's a whole bunch of great questions are within there. Number one, as far as consolidation, I can't give you any information at all about consolidation because I don't know anything about whether we may not, possibly when. Here's what I can tell you about consolidation. In the last meeting, there was a comment made about consolidation always brings down the needs and the expenses, because when you consolidate, you can take a few people from over here and save money by cutting a bunch more because you don't need those people. Here's where that absolutely is 100% not true. And we'll just use the city and us as an example because that's the best example we got right now, right? So if our calls are 55,000 calls a year, city's calls is roughly 55,000 a year. 911 calls are roughly 50,000 a year. Cities is 50,000 a year. We have 16 people. They have 16 people, and we're both struggling.
and we both need help because we're sinking, then if you consolidate, well, now you've got 100,000 calls, you've got 100,000 911 calls, and you got 32 people that's doing the same amount of work as they did when they were just 16 of them. So consolidation in some areas may be great if you've got a one dispatcher town, and I don't know, McGee, Dumas, Eudora, somewhere down there like that, where they've got one person and they run that person 12 hours a day, and they absorb that person into a center where they've got 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 dispatchers, let's just say Pine Bluff, then it makes a difference, because now you're taking on 3 calls a night, you're taking on 7 calls in a 24-hour period, you're not taking on 800, you're not taking on 600. So in those cases, it may be beneficial to consolidate. In our example only, it absolutely 100% would mean nothing if we consolidated, because all we're doing is doubling the number of problems, we're doubling the number of people, and both of us are short-staffed, short-handed, we're all struggling, we're both struggling with the same thing. So consolidation will not help us at all. The bigger part of that question, I think, is, do we need these people right now to get us over a hump, and then maybe we consolidate at some point in the future and we have more people to work with? And the answer is no, sir. Absolutely not. What we need is what we need right now. We can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but we do know this. If we need these people right now, then it's not going to all of a sudden slow down if we consolidate. The world is not going to change, and the world is not going to start doing things different because Garland County and Hot Springs dispatch centers consolidate, right? It's going to keep growing, crime's going to keep growing, prosecutors going to keep getting slammed, and Lord knows I've watched that one since 1991, and it hadn't slowed down, just like the sheriff's office hadn't slowed down. Neither one of them. And kudos to Madam Prosecutor for the job well done with the number of people, because I've watched it since day one, this whole thing, and how she's doing that, I'll never know. But bottom line is what the bottom line is. We need the people now. Consolidation isn't going to help that, and it's not going to cut our number of calls at all.
Thank you, Corky. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Corky, could you expand for everyone a little bit on the warrant process, the orders of protection, the things that we do in there that are not just answering the phone and dispatching somebody? Could you help us with that a little bit so they have the same understanding that I do, please?
Yes, sir. So part of what I had last week or last month was numbers on the increase in the administrative and ACIC type work. So what you have to realize with ACIC is every single thing that goes into the Criminal Justice Information System, CJIS as we call it for short, everything that goes in there is entered by somebody. Now, what goes into that system? Every warrant, every driver's license, every traffic stop, every case file, portions of case file, every protection orders, every writs, every garnishment, everything that has to do with somebody that's got anywhere from a learner's permit all the way up to major felony crimes that are going to prison. Everything that comes out of what they do goes into, gets modified in, and has to be taken back out of that system when folks are either found not guilty, records expunged, the warrant gets served, that kind of thing. So where we used to on our PSAP certifications, we had to put how much time we devote to things that are not 911. And so they quit asking this a couple of years ago, and I'm really glad that they did, because these numbers directly affect the amount of money that we get back from the 911 board. They take a percentage of what you don't do that's related to 911, and they subtract that from what they pay you in wireless phone dues, right? So we went from like 10% of ACIC work to 20, and I'm even going to venture, I said 20 last month as a conservative number, 25+%. We spend hours a day doing ACIC work. To explain that a little bit further, we're a non-criminal justice agency. We don't do criminal justice work, right? ACIC is a criminal justice agency. I just lost my word. That's an action that should be taken by a criminal justice agency, right? But we take that role on through an agreement that started in 17, and we have the responsibility of doing that right now. It takes hours and hours a day. Well, if you've only got 2 people and at 10 minutes till 5, 6 orders of protection come in, guess what? They have to be entered right now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no getting away from that. ACIC and the FBI require us to enter those right now at this point. So I've got somebody for the next 5 hours, in essence, that's going to be devoted to working on orders of protection instead of getting fire, police, medical to your house when something's going on. So I said, fortunately, the 911 board no longer looks at that. It's highly probable that that's coming back in because they are looking at ways to save money themselves. As we all know, we all want to save money, right? Well, they're looking at ways to save that money and use it for whatever they need to use it for also. I predict that in the very near future, they're going to come back and say, we want to know how much time you're spending on non-911 functions. And when we do that, and we show them that we're spending 25% plus of our time on a criminal justice matter, they're going to take away 25% of our wireless funds because we're not doing 911 work. Does that answer your question? Maybe a bunch of them.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Corky,
yeah.
it's not particularly for you regarding your current request for employees, but it's back to the 911 merger possibility, a lot of which I'm just trying to pull back what I read, the state mandate. It seemed like that mandate was 2025, regarding 2025, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it also, I believe, the primary provider of services in your market, which would be us, the county,
Correct.
would, if the other provider, the city, did not choose to merge with the county, don't we receive increased funding that was
That is
their
what
funding?
is directed.
Pardon?
That is what is directed. If we are the only PSAP and they do not consolidate, then the funding that they're getting now, which is about 485, I believe, 483, somewhere in there,
485, 3,000.
that would go to Garland County.
Would go to Garland County. And loosely, and I know I don't want you to answer this, but it doesn't seem like they want to merge with us at this point in time.
I think they do. We've had several meetings, and right now we spent about 8 painstaking hours down here going over CAD systems. The biggest problem is Garland County is on Southern Software, which we believe is the very best, the most user-friendly, and in the long run, the most cost-efficient. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
So the city of Hot Springs believes that Spillman is the best CAD. That's who they use. Now, Spillman provides a great system, but the cost of doing business is more. And to me, and we sat through it all, it's not user-friendly. So Garland County's Southern Software is tied to our records management system. All the stuff comes out of there and goes to the sheriff's office for records management. It's also tied to our jail management system. Everything that goes on in the jail comes through the CAD, goes through the records management, goes through the jail. Our commissary is tied to it. We have a world of information tied to Southern. City of Hot Springs has records management, 37 years worth of records management. So regardless which CAD we go with, and my choice is Southern, it's going to be very expensive to bring the other one in. I believe, and Corky may remember this better than I believe I was quoted from Spillman just to bring us up to speed with our CAD, $785,000 initially. Do you remember that number, Corky?
I believe the 785 was to bring in record management, jail management, and CAD. And just to get us to where we are right now with the CAD, it was like 525,000.
So either way, the cost of transferring the 37 years of documentation that they have, information that they have stored in Spillman, to bring it and transfer it to Southern is going to be huge.
Okay. So-
We just interviewed a young lady that's going to work for Garland County in the 911 center, and she's working at a center right now that is utilizing both. They are
So-
having to look at two screens at one time because one of the entities that merged has not been able to get off of Spillman yet. So we're asking our 911 person to, wait a minute, that's the PD. I need to go over here and get on Spillman. No, wait a minute, that's the sheriff's office. I need to get on Southern. All right, we've got two screens pulled up here, and we're trying to work two CADs at one time. So this is going to be a very complex and very expensive procedure, Justice Young.
So if
Seven
there-
figures.
If there's not a merger, that funding comes to us and they close house?
No,
Okay.
we will be the primary regardless. They can keep a dispatch center. They won't be a primary. We will be the primary.
Okay.
But they can
So
still have
it
a dispatch center. They
Seems
just
like it
will
would be a
not.
windfall if there's not a merger, of economic
I
windfall.
don't know if I'd call it a windfall, but the funding that they're receiving now, and Corky brought up a good point, the funding that they're receiving now will come to us. But if history repeats itself, they will look at that and say, well, you probably don't need that much because you're not doing 100% in there. You know, if the merger happens, which I believe we're going to make a very good effort at it, they've got the same issue with warrants over there. They don't get as many orders of protection because they don't deal with circuit court. But the PD
correct.
brings all those warrants with them as well. So your question is, would it fund it? No.
Okay, thank you.
An observation on that, and I would just ask your comment on it, Judge, is that if you're dealing with two systems and people are involved in answering these calls, and people make mistakes, they don't mean to do it, but they do it. Ain't a day go by I don't screw up something, I'll tell you that. Always have, always will, and I guess that's the way it is with everyone else in the world. So merging a system where you have two systems like that, trying to operate both at the same time seems to me to be kind of a goofy decision. I think you're better off choosing one or the other
We will
simply
have
because
to.
you simplify it, and in simplification, you become more accurate in what you do. Am I
No,
right? Or is
you're exactly right. But the problem is they haven't been able to get everybody over on it. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just flip a switch and say, okay, everybody over here on Southern. You'll have to go through training for those that are on Spillman to get them on Southern. You'll have to upgrade everything in our dispatch center. When merger happens, we have to go from what we've got now as a 7500E. We'll have to upgrade all of our radio systems and CADs to 7500Es because we're playing 7500s. And what we're told by Motorola, if they're operated in the same dispatch center, you're going to have an echo. And we can't have an echo in a 911 center. So the reason that these other entities are still using two is because you can't flip a switch and make it happen. And they've been working on their merger. They've probably been working on it for a year and a half. But we are 16 months deep into a redundant connectivity project that we're having an update on tomorrow morning. We haven't seen the first piece of equipment on yet. And that's 16 months. So this is not going to happen overnight, but yes, you're exactly right. We will not operate two separate CAD systems for our dispatchers to have to operate on. There's just no way we can do it. We have to have one. And to me, and to our staff, and to everybody that's used both, Southern is the choice. And over time, it's a more reasonable venture, and they have AVL, we have AVL through them. I mean, we have a lot of product through them, and they take care of absolutely everything for us. Good customer service, all of our recording system, everything. But we will not have two separate CADs in there that we have to operate on at the same time.
Thank you, sir. Corky, anybody else have anything for Corky while he's here?
Can the public ask a question?
You want to ask questions of Corky or of us? Oh, good. Go ahead. I don't have a problem, but please step up to the mic and state your name, address, or whatever, so we can identify the speaker, and then.
Okay. It was real short. Reggie Cowan, 120 Rosemary Drive. I live outside the city limits. How many employees should you have now?
Let me grab this. I got in trouble for not speaking with the microphone last month. So right now, our staffing models show that we should be at 20.9,
How many employees do you have?
16.
Having trouble finding employees?
Yes, sir.
That was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie.
He said he was having.
Thank you, Corky.
Corky, I believe we're one short over there right now. Is that correct?
Yes,
Level 1.
yes. With the new hire from last week, yes.
And still in training,
Correct,
several.
correct.
We're experiencing the same thing there as we did with the sheriff's office. Our institutional knowledge is slowly leaving us, and we're having to hire new people, which requires more training. We established a trainer in-house. So we're seeing the same things there, that we're kind of having to reinvent the wheel, but we are getting a good product because they're trained exactly like we want them to be trained.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Corky.
Thank you.
I'd also like to ask a question of Chief Elrod. A few days ago, I had the occasion to have to get up early and drive to Little Rock. I wasn't quite out of Garland County. I saw a state policeman pull somebody over. It was still dark, very early in the morning. It looked like there was only one guy in the car. And it made me think about our situation here, because maybe I watch too much TV, I don't know, but it just seems to me I wouldn't walk up on a car that I don't know anybody in the middle of the night, not knowing what they're up to and whatever. So what's the real risk for us here?
So comparing state police and Garland County, there's a lot of different functions that we perform. So state police primarily operate on the highways, traffic, any of your fatality accidents. We, as in Garland County, we call state to assist us with those because they're proficient at it. Garland County will actually be going to different residents. So going down the county roads, going to houses, going inside the houses, going into sheds, responding to a break-in or entering, responding to a burglary or robbery. Those are going to be some of the different nuances of the two different agencies.
Okay. So right now, what do you do when you answer a call?
So right now, whenever we answer a call, so give a good example would be the same one that I'd mentioned at the prior meeting, disturbance call. So if you have a disturbance call, two people are not getting along at minimum. So you respond to those calls generally with two officers if you can. Anytime that there's a disturbance call, you have the officer in the zone and a supervisor generally en route. If you have more than one, now you start getting into that situation where you have to decide, are you going to go in alone or are you going to make somebody wait? The other day, we had 3 disturbance calls, all on the same time, all on the CAD. You're really left with a dilemma, so the answer to your question would be, we go in alone, because that's what we've got.
Okay.
We can permit the public to wait on our
And if
account.
you don't have if you can answer a call with 2 people, then that means another individual has to be called from someplace else within the county to leave whatever he's doing to get to that call. So you basically abandon one in favor of another if you have a risk that's high enough that where you have to have 2 officers there?
I think that would be an accurate statement, yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure my thinking was correct.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions for Chief?
Yes, I do. Mr. Elrod, thank you. My district is kind of split. Half of my voters probably are on the shores of Lake Hamilton within the city limits. The other half are on the shores in the county.
Sure.
All of the water is in the county. The thing that I hear most, being someone that lives in the city, and when I step in the water, I'm in the county, from my voters is we need more lake patrol and a little more response, a better response to things that are happening on the water in this basin or in this bay and off of these condominiums and so forth. What are the chances that these officers would increase the presence on Lake Hamilton?
That's going to be a decision with Sheriff McCormick. Sheriff, you want to attest to that?
Sure, and we'd have to make that determination when the time comes. Right now, we have 1 full-time Marine Patrol deputy.
Okay, so you don't think right now in what you're looking at that you have seen that you haven't seen it already, whether there would be an increase in that?
It would certainly be
Service.
warranted, but at this point in time, I would say no,
Thank you.
we're going to stick with the 1.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question.
Go ahead, Dayton.
Chief Elrod, it's my understanding that when LifeNet is dispatched to a call that the sheriff's office is dispatched to also that they are actually will sit and wait for the deputy to arrive on scene before they will go onto the scene. Am I correct in my understanding of that?
Yes, that is generally correct. Disturbance call is another good example. LifeNet's unable to go on the scene, so it's not necessarily that they want to wait, but they need to wait before we can go, make the scene safe, and then permit them to come in.
So, when we've got one deputy responding to a domestic violence, any type of violent situation where you've got more than one individual involved, or even with one individual, we're asking that deputy to put their life on the line potentially with no backup that may be 15 or 20 minutes away. It's just, I think LifeNet's non-responding until a deputy gets there, until they can feel safe. I think that all of our deputies should have that same, what's the word I'm looking for? That same feeling of safeness when they respond to a call. And we've got to get more deputies so that our deputies now can feel safe when they're out there responding. I don't want to be reading the newspaper or watching the news one day and hear that there's a Garland County Sheriff's officer been ambushed and shot because there's not anybody to back him up. So we're looking at a very serious issue here, but it's, I know there's several people in the crowd that want to speak that are going to share differing opinions, but I don't see any reason how we cannot afford at this time to get more deputies. We've got to do it. We have to do it. And that's just all I have to say. Thank you, Chief Elrod.
Thank you. Debbie, you had something?
Yes, sir. On the 10 positions that you're asking for, are they all for patrol positions?
Currently, yes. The 2 currently funded positions and the 8 new, the 8 would go to patrol, yes.
2 of those positions are funded by ARPA that we were able to come up with last year or year before, and that will expire. ARPA will expire, so we're looking to bring those on and fund them out of this as well. And I believe the sheriff had said something about 2 of those may go into CID if we can get some more. CID's drowning too. I talked to an individual in there last week, and they said they were way behind as well, which lends to what the prosecutor just told you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, as much as I don't like taxes, I don't see how we can not do this. I was in law enforcement for 40 years. I worked with I knew 3 officers that lost their life as police officers. One at Hot Springs Police Department that I started with, Wayne Warwick, and the other one, which was Brent Scripner. I worked with him at the parole office. And also we lost another one, Chris Anderson. And, to my knowledge, neither one of them had a bag up. They stopped cars. They were traffic stops. 2 of them was traffic stops, and one was a home type situation. And they were both killed. I remember going seeing Wayne Warwick after he got shot in the hospital. And he told me that we had, there were 7 of us when we started, and there were 3 of us left at that particular time. And he told me that he always figured it would be me and him that made it. I stood there for a minute and didn't know what to say, but then he told me, and this was the last conversation I had with him, that nobody cared. He said, I got shot and nobody cares. I said, Wayne, I care. I never went back to see him after that because I didn't know what to say to him. But I just don't think that if we don't do this, I think we're putting officers in danger, and that we should do something to ensure or try and make sure that everybody goes home at the end of the watch.
Thank you, Thomas. Anyone else have anything for the chief?
Chief Elrod, if I may, Chairman, one of the questions I have, and maybe that would help the public out, is can you explain to us how your shifts work and how many patrolmen are on there and stuff, and how when they start, when they finish? Because that's kind of the questions I've had maybe from my district is, I made this call, but where are they at? How many are on the shift? And then someone else said, well, I saw 2 in a car, 2 patrolmen, so there are 2. So that's where the conflict is. So I thought maybe if you explained how all that worked.
Yeah, absolutely. So each shift is derived about 6 or 7 deputies, depending on which shift we're looking at. We have 4 shifts, 2 on nights, 2 on days, and they rotate. They work 12-hour shifts, so they come in at 6 in the morning, get off at 6 in the evening. Anytime that you're seeing 2 deputies in a car, one of them's in training, just like the county judge so eloquently put. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of experience last year. So we're extensively in training mode. We have a lot of new people who have not completed the field training program. And given the environment that we have, until they fully complete that, we're not going to throw them to the wolves, and we're not going to have them to respond to that disturbance call until they have fully completed that field training officer program and completed the 13-week academy.
So when they're on the shift, are they covering the entire county?
Yes, so the way that they're divvied up throughout the county is the county itself is split up into 4 zones. You got north, south, east, and west. So you'll have 1 deputy minimum assigned to each one of those areas. Generally, you'll have a corporal and a sergeant who try to roam, and there's your 6 people. So if anybody calls in sick, now you got 1 person to roam and be that second unit to respond to that disturbance call. If you got 1 sick, 1 on vacation, now you're down to the minimum staff. You got 1 in each zone, and that's it.
I get you. Very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I had an observation as the judge was talking. The cost of this, and this committee can't say we're going to impose this or not. We're simply going to study it and make a decision as to whether we send it up to the Quorum Court for the whole Quorum Court to consider and to make a judgment on whether we have a millage increase or not, or how we fund this, or whether we want to fund it, or what all of the options may be. But as I read these numbers and as I listened to the judge, I was struck by the fact that my wife and I were running errands this morning. And so we were over near Hobby Lobby and decided to go to Firehouse Subs. We shared 1 sandwich, 2 drinks, 2 bags of chips. Cost $23.30. Okay. I know that there are tons of people who, when they take a look at a value of $100,000 and their taxes may cost them 20 more, may say that, well, I can't afford that. And that's probably true for some folks. But that's not our question. Our question is, and this is what we were elected to do, was to take the problems of the county, to bring them in, to study them, and figure out how we can help alleviate those problems. And sometimes that means you have to do the dirty work of going up on your price. And believe me, I've done that. I run companies and we had to go up on our price. Didn't want to do it, but we had to do it if we were going to stay stable. We were going to exist. So the only thing I'm just saying to you is that you cannot endure that, but at the same time, you have to take it in consideration. And then there's one other thing that crossed my mind as I thought about this over the last month. And that's only because I guess maybe I do a lot of reading and whatever, but I kind of got the feeling that a lot of people probably that sit on a quorum court, and maybe I'm judging you all wrong. I don't mean to be judging you at all, but I don't know that you know exactly what our capabilities and responsibilities are. I talked to John a little bit about it because I was worried that I used to run into what I call micromanaging in the corporate world, where people were trying to figure out how to do one thing or another. And we had some testimony from some folks that was good testimony, and they had a valid point that maybe any kind of increase should go to the public to vote on. And certainly I don't have a problem with that in a lot of ways. But we have certain responsibilities and certain powers within our capabilities that we now have. I don't think that this is an issue that needs to be, and this is me personally, not as your chairman speaking to you, but Larry Rainey from his heart. I don't see that anything is gained in this situation to send this back from the quorum court to the people. I think it's a decision that's hard to make for each of us because of the people we represent, but I also think it's something that we have to consider. And so I asked John if he wouldn't address this. John, would you explain to me where our authority comes from with regard to millage increases?
There's a lot of different authority for taxation. The authority for the tax that we're discussing here tonight would date to the Constitution, Article 16, Section 9, and to 2625-101. Both of those are they're from 1874 and 1883, respectively.
1883.
Yes, sir.
Any changes along the way? That's a long time.
Sure. Lots of various different revisions and things were made, but the core substance of what you can do dates back to that time period.
And what is that we can do?
I have to pull the statute up, but 1 second. I have them right here on my phone. Article 16, Section 9 is the limitation on county taxes. No county shall levy a tax to exceed 1/2% for all purposes, but may levy an additional 1/2% to pay indebtedness existing at the time of the ratification of the Constitution. So you can see that it dates back to the original ratification of the 1874 Constitution. And then the particular statute that stems from that, 1883, is it shall be unlawful for the county to levy on the taxable property of the county in any 1 year a greater percentage rate than is authorized in this section. 1, for all county purposes, not exceeding 5 mills on the dollar. And 2, for paying indebtedness existing at the time of the adoption of the present Arkansas Constitution, not exceeding 5 mills on the dollar. So this is effectively the enabling legislation from the original constitutional
and that
section.
5 mills represents basically the same thing as the original law?
Yes, sir.
1.5%?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
So a mill is effectively a 0.1%, so 0.5% would cap you at 5 mills, which is what's also set forth in the statute.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't know if everybody was aware of that, and that's why I wanted it stated in this meeting tonight so that each of you know where we are. And my only other comment is, and this is just coming from me as a JP and not as chairman, I want you to understand that, is that we have a heavy responsibility here, and we have to take it seriously. I think we should study it. We have another meeting scheduled for next month. I would ask the judge a question with regard to, I know that initially we sent out the request, copies of the request from the Sheriff's Department and the 911 Center to all JPs. And I would say if nobody has that or you need extra copies, please get them and read through them again in light of this paperwork. If you don't have a copy of this 1 mill proposal, then read it and understand where the money's coming from and what it produces. I think it's a serious, weighted proposition that we need to spend some time on. We don't need to rush into this. We need to talk it through. I think if we have anything else this evening, we can gather that. But next month, I'm hopeful that what we can do is come in and give everybody a chance to digest everything that's been given to them. If there's anything new, we'll get that given to us, sit down and really talk about it, make a serious decision on whether we send this up or not. And at that point, it then becomes an action on the quorum court, and this committee is out of that at that point. Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, Larry, I agree. We do need one more meeting on this. Also, on that ticket, what was the total at Firehouse? Firehouse?
Firehouse, I've got my receipt right here, pardon.
Yeah.
$23.30, but that was with tax.
What was the tax?
Tax was $2.74.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with your thought process that while it may be needed for an extra meeting to occur on the specifics of this, I think that could be accomplished at the Finance Committee meeting in May, as opposed to another Public Health, Safety, and Welfare meeting. The further we push this along, the more lives that we potentially put at risk. And that's the fact of the matter. I think if we send this out of the committee, whether it receives a due pass or it doesn't at this committee tonight, I think that the Finance Committee would be best equipped, even though I'm not even on that committee, to discuss the facts and figures as far as the finances, because we're really not, that's really not in our purview in this committee to talk about the mill itself and how the funding is. So
I would agree, but I think it has to come into your thought processes, knowing what you're going to send up.
I agree, but if all of us, or if a majority of us see a need for this position, or for these multiple positions to be created, I don't see why we wait on it. I mean, but I may be in the minority on that, but I'd say let's go ahead and let the Finance Committee debate this. We'll have, obviously, a lot of debate on it at the full quorum court in May, and let's go ahead and get this done one way or the other. Judge, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, Mr. Chairman. As I said initially, I would like to get this to Finance and the full quorum court in May. And the reason being is it will take us a year to hire these individuals and get them trained. So if we started today, if we had the funding today and we started today, it would take us a year, and we probably wouldn't have them all hired and trained in a year. So if we could impose the tax to start July 1st, have a half a year to collect it, we could effectively budget in 25 to have all those individuals on the payroll. As Justice Myers said, the millage and the funding of this really needs to go to finance. Public health, welfare, and safety, to me, it's the need that we study in here. And then we go to finance with it to study the funding of it. And then, of course, the full quorum court is the one that actually has the say-so, and not any committee. If it needs to get to the full quorum court to vote on it and approve it or not. To me, at this time, to vote against it would be a vote against public safety. This is the only way that we can effectively introduce these positions that our public safety people have asked for.
I appreciate your remarks, Judge, and I understand that. So I would place the question to the committee members. Are you ready to make a decision tonight?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would it be appropriate for us to, I mean, I'm not trying to limit public debate at all. Would it be okay for us, before we go into that discussion, to allow public comment?
I don't see why not.
If we could, let's do that before we go into.
Larry, you got something? Would you come up and to the mic? Please state your name and address.
History.
State your name and address, Larry. We all
Larry
know.
Williams, 208 Daffodil. You might as well call me Fall Williams because I've fallen twice. But at least I'm walking again. In 2008, we took to the voters a proposal to build a new jail, finance a new communication system for law enforcement and other public safety purposes. I wanted to say that we also had a proposal to that half of that was going to be a temporary tax and half would be a permanent tax for law enforcement. The voters approved all of our projects, but they defeated the financing plan. That still left us with a problem in the general fund. We had a 1.2 road meal tax. And being over the road department, I knew that we had more than sufficient revenue coming in from that source for the road department. But the general fund was in need of a cash injection, so I proposed to the quorum court in 2008, after that sales tax was defeated, that we shift 2/10 of a meal from the road fund to the general fund, which at that time amounted to something like $250,000. Then, continuing to get pressure from various quarters that we raise our millage, I put forth a plan to the 2009 Quorum Court. There were 3 people that were serving at that time, that we have 1 mill for roads and 1 mill for general. And that all that was an 0.8 of a mill increase. And the Quorum Court defeated that. I think we fell 1 or 2 votes short. So I don't remember how you guys voted back then, but I think the plan I had was pretty good then. And I think that Judge Mahoney has evolved over the time to see that when we lowered that general fund to 0, that we weren't taking into account the property growth that we had. We now have a homestead tax credit for the poor or low income. They might not owe any property taxes if they fall below that limit. So I just wanted to share that information with you. Judge, I do have a question. I know that you could go ahead and the finance committee or whomever agree that you're going to raise the millage, but unless something's changed, you can know that you're going to do that, but the tax rates are set at the November meeting. Has there been a change in the law?
I'll have to get with John on that to see when it can actually be imposed. I don't think there's anything preventing it from being imposed at mid-year. Rebecca might have more information on that.
Well,
No, I'm talking about for 25. It would be imposed in 24 to be collected in 25.
You could vote to go ahead and do it, but we levy the taxes in November.
That's correct.
And when I took that millage proposal to the Quorum Court in 2009, we did at that meeting. As I recall, after it was defeated, you made the motion that we retain the 0.2 of a mill in the general fund. So
your memory's better than mine on that because I don't remember that. But
well,
I do know that
I was asking Ray something. He said, "Well, my memory's not all that clear on that." So anyway, but
John's done some research on it. When he comes back in here, we'll ask that. But I believe that it can be imposed at mid-year. It won't be billed till next year.
Well,
but we do set the millage rate at the end of the year. But you know, I don't know about the schools, but they have elections that raise millages in mid-year. So with something we would have to do research on.
And the only discretion the Quorum Court has with regard to the millage, it sets the millage for the road fund and the general fund. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
John, Larry had a question about whether the millage could be imposed at any time other than November. And I told him that we had done some research and we did not see anything that would prevent it. However, we still had more research to do, and you might be able to expand on that.
I don't have you a definitive answer on that. I assume the Larry in question was Larry Rainey? No. Larry Williams. I don't have a definitive answer on that, Mr. Williams. At this point, I see nothing in the law that would prevent it from being imposed immediately or once the statutory requirements are met, meaning once the ordinance that levies it is published, it could then be in effect. But I need to get a better handle on that before we go forward with it. There's nothing that directly prohibits it, let's put it that way.
Yes, 2 gentlemen out there. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, I'm Bart Stafford at 900 Prospect Avenue. Just expressing an opinion of a resident of Garland County. I've had an opportunity to listen to the discussions last time and then this time as well. And I've been absolutely convinced of the need based on the discussions that I've heard. So I not only feel there's a need for it, but I agree with Justice Myers, there's a sense of urgency given that all this is coming together at one time. I know that the court has a responsibility for public safety and also for doing things at a good value for the county. But when you look at those two sides of the scale, in this case, I personally conclude that public safety will trump the need to have maybe a millage increase on this. And I suspect that those people who take advantage of our public safety departments, if they had a problem that they wanted addressed, they'd probably agree with us pretty quick. The one thing I would say, though, in making this case is to tell the story with numbers. Numbers don't lie unless you're a statistician, but I would say, I've heard a lot of good discussion, but I'd like to see displayed on these screens in public discussions about this very real need, what demand has driven, how people and services have kept up with that demand or not kept up with it, how they compare to counties of a similar nature to ours, and really be able to show with the numbers that this is not an emotional decision. It's not a decision based on somebody wanting a bigger budget, but this is a very real need. Let the numbers tell that story. I'm just saying that when the case needs to be made, I think some nice graphs and comparisons and, put the numbers up and let people see the impact of not going forward with something like this. So anyway, thank you for
your input. Mr. Fleming, you had something?
I'm Bill Fleming, 231 Long Beach Drive, Hot Springs. Appreciate this moment. I want to say up front, I received, as of coming in tonight, the county funds that we have. A year or so ago, nearly 2 years ago, I did an FOI concerning the funds that Garland County had. I would ask that these funds would become a part of our package every month that you received and I received, showing the public.
Bill, please, let me interrupt you for a minute. I understand what you're talking about, and I have no problem with it, but this committee is not the finance committee. This committee is the public health, welfare, and safety. The comments that have been made tonight, that's what we're looking for, that address the need for the requests that have been placed in front of us.
Correct.
If you want to address that issue, which I think you have perfect right to do so, I think you need to do that during the Finance Committee in May.
All right.
The Finance Committee this month is already met,
right.
So we're.
All right. Here's the funds that Garland County has on
Bill,
deposit
I'm saying
tonight.
that I don't think your presentation tonight is within the bounds of consideration of this committee.
Well, the fact that the judge has referred to the fact there's a dire need for money to finance all these positions, and this has not been made public. So I say, number one, this needs to be voted on, this millage. But as of 4/22/24, the county has $54,310,000.
Bill, please, bear with me here. This committee's considerations tonight are only centered on the idea of whether or not these requests are genuine and needful. And we're going to call for a vote here in a moment to see what the committee wants to do tonight. What you want to talk about is the money. We cannot even consider the money here. I may have made a faux pas in bringing up my own personal feelings with regard to the cost engendered in this, but it was only because of reading through what I saw and what I thought the cost would be, and when I saw the numbers of what the costs were, I thought it was well within our grasp. Perhaps I erred, and that shouldn't have been mentioned until the committee meeting, the Finance Committee meeting. The remarks that you are making have nothing to do with this committee tonight. I would ask you please to excuse
So you do not want these numbers to be made public?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying make them public, but do it in the right committee. This committee is not going to further that cause in any way, shape, or form.
You're censoring my speech tonight, correct?
I'm not censuring you, sir. I'm saying that what you're trying to present to this committee is beyond the capability of this committee to consider. If it is beyond our consideration, there is no value in you going to the trouble of presenting it. Please come back in May at the Finance Committee, make a request to be on that, to speak to this issue. That's where it could be considered. It can't be considered here tonight.
Larry, that's exactly right. But these people and these on this committee needs to know that this county has a 54 in interest-bearing checking and money markets, and then the CDs, they've got $54,325,000. Road bonds, $4,652,000. We've got $113
Bill, please,
million.
for gosh sakes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your stepping back. Yes, sir, you had a remark with regard to our discussion tonight. Please state your name and address.
My name is Russell Thomas.
Please, into the mic.
Yeah, my name is Russell Thomas, 112 Summer Street in the city. I'd like to address a presentation that was made to the Quorum Court at the March 25th meeting about the level of staffing at sheriff's departments around the country and compared to our sheriff's department. At that report that was presented, we were told that we have 9.4 deputies per 10,000. That nationwide there are 28 deputies per 10,000, and we're about 18.6 deputies per 10,000 short. That would indicate that we are roughly serving with about a third of the deputies needed. That would be 116 roughly deputies to correct that number. We also were given some examples of cities that have that number. We were given some examples of counties like Washington that have 18.6 and Craighead that have 22.6 per 10,000. But when I left the meeting, I made a FOI request and asked for the source of that data. And I was given some data regarding cities, and I was given that 2.8 per 1,000 number that the FBI reports. Addressing cities as a way of figuring how many sheriff's deputies you need is not a proper way of doing it. If you can simply Google what the crime rate differences are between cities and rural areas, and most of the results you'll get are about 3 to 4 times as much crime in cities as there is in rural areas. So I would ignore the numbers that you've been given on cities as a way of determining how many deputies we should have here. As far as the 2.8 or 28 per 10,000 that the FBI publishes, saying that that's a staffing level for counties, it doesn't specifically address whether that's sworn deputies or what the number goes for. And there are no departments around here at that level or anywhere near that level. I believe that when they come up with that, you've got some departments like Cook County in Chicago that has 200 and something deputies per 10,000. Yeah, you have a lot of really major departments. Maybe that skews that number up really high. Maybe they're looking at the complete employment of those departments. And if you do so, we have pretty close to 28 employees per 10,000 in our sheriff's department. But anyway, I don't believe that number is a realistic goal for this county. And
I looked at some of the other numbers that were given regarding counties, and Washington County, he gave 18.6 per 10,000. Well, Washington County is a very wealthy county. I mean, the cities like Goshen in Washington County, where the household income is almost $250,000 a year, compared to the largest city, or the highest income in our county is like $50,000 per. So 50,000 per family average income. So we don't relate to Washington County. It's it's the second wealthiest county in the state. We were given a comparison to Craighead County in Jonesboro. And Craighead County is a very unique county that about 80% of their population is covered by a city police department, leaving only about 20,000 people that are covered by the sheriff's department. Their sheriff's department has resource officers in it that ours don't. They have a DARE officer that teaches kindergartners to stay off of drugs that ours doesn't. They have transportation officers and bailiffs and all in that number. I don't know what all is in the number we're using, but Craighead County is an anomaly when you compare it to similar counties. I went through and found a website called Police Scorecard that uses the census data and uses the most recent Department of Justice data to do the same determination, which is how many officers per 10,000 are there in each of the counties in the country. And when you look at those numbers, and I've got copies of these for each of the JPs if you would like for me to hand them to you, or I can just tell you what it is. But basically, outside of Craighead County, if you look at the 5 counties that have the most similar population to us, the ones that are within 25,000 of us, Faulkner County has 10.5 per 10,000. Saline has 9.2 per 10,000. If you adjust for Hot Springs Village, which has 19 officers that patrol the areas, those are not government officers, so they're not included in the FBI's data. And that would adjust their coverage to 11.2. And then if you look at Craighead County, we've already reviewed that, it's 22. Garland County is 10.2. When we adjust for Hot Springs Village, we have 12.2 per 10,000. White County at 13.8 and Lone Oak at 10.2. So the numbers are not dramatically different in Garland County than they are at any of the other counties with similar populations around the state, with the one exception of Craighead County. If you look at the counties surrounding Garland County, they're all extremely close in the number of deputies per 10,000 that we have. Yale County is 12.2, Perry County 12.2, Saline County 11.2 adjusted for the village, Montgomery County 12.4, Hot Springs County 12.7. My point is that the report we were given had some very high numbers in it, but I don't think they relate to how we should staff our sheriff's department here in Garland County. Additionally, there was a letter in the Freedom of Information request that I got that was from the sheriff's department to the judge's department, to the county judge's department, and it had a page 3 that had a lot of similar numbers to what I've just presented. That letter didn't make it into the packet that was given to the Quorum Court, but it has some numbers such as, let me pull that out here. It referred to a couple of additional counties, such as Saline County with 11.2. They had Faulkner with 14.3. Sebastian County 11.2. These lower numbers were not presented at the Quorum Court meeting. They were not included in the agenda packet that was presented at the Quorum Court, nor were they presented in the presentation last week. So all I'm saying is I think we ought to look a little harder at the numbers that we were presented at last month's meeting.
Russ, I got a question for you.
Yes.
You're talking about the 10,000 population. What about the mileage from one end of the county to the other? I mean, how do you give account for that? If they've got to go, say, 30 miles across the county to get from one end to the other to back up somebody, how do you take care of that?
You know, I don't have all of your answers for how you police. I do know that Garland County is a fairly average-sized county for Arkansas. I've seen counties that we have 675 or something square miles. There's a lot of counties in that 700 range, some in the 800 range, some in the 500 range. You know, so when we're trying to compare apples for apples, we are a fairly average-sized county.
Mr. Thomas, the other thing that's not taken into consideration in your numbers that you've got from your website or the numbers that Chief Elrod presented to us last month is the tourism factor. And I don't know exactly how you calculate that either, but all of the counties that you mentioned, I don't know if Conway, Benton or Bryant or any of those counties having a huge tourism base. So I don't know exactly how we calculate that. Maybe there's a website that can tell us how many people are in Garland County, unincorporated area at any given time. I doubt it. But we're a little bit different than those counties that you're comparing us to in the sense that we do have a huge tourism industry. I know in my district alone, there's a ton of secondary homes, people that live in Little Rock, people that live out of state, Northwest Arkansas, that come down here that are not included in census information. So we can't just rely on census information that either one, whichever your numbers are correct or Chief Elrod's numbers are correct. I don't know. I'm not a statistics expert, but we do have a huge tourism base that adds to our need that does not reflect in the census numbers.
You know, I was only trying to compare this to what was presented previously, but I did look and see on that same site what the coverage for Branson, which is Taney County, Missouri is, and that's 12.7 officers per 10,000. And we additionally have a lot of additional law enforcement in this county, such as the, like I said, Hot Springs Village has got 19 additional officers that aren't put into these numbers. And they're not because they're not governmental police, but they are certified law enforcement officers. And it's not right to take your 10,000 population that's in the Garland County side of Hot Springs Village and use that as justification for your officers. But Taney County that Branson is in has 12.7 officers per 10,000. So there's a tourist community. They boast 4 to 8 million visitors per year. I've not seen what Hot Springs says, but I have seen that the national park has something a little over 2 million per year. 2.7 million is what they say they have. I've seen that Lake Ouachita says that they have about 4 million a year, and also that they do have 18 officers in the summer and about 10 in the off term to help with that.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. And I have these papers, the numbers that I'm using. I've got some for each of the JPs if you wish.
If
I've
you
got
will
one
leave
copy of the entire report I used.
Leave it with us, we'll be sure to get it distributed.
Pardon?
If you will leave it with us, we will be sure to give everyone a copy.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys want to? Oh, I'm sorry, someone else?
I was looking over the packet that was submitted under the FOI, and the packet that we provided for submission to the JPs has all that information that Mr. Thomas was referring to. There was nothing left out.
Okay, thank you. George? Would you
George
state your
Pritchett,
name and address?
207 Crestwood, Hot Springs. I'm not going to go over what Mr. Thomas already mentioned, but I do have a couple of concerns here. And I'm not saying that we don't maybe need more officers, should have more officers. Of course, I do believe that there would never be enough. Anyway, back in the mid-90s, the county and the city both voted if we won't do millages, if we'll give you the sales tax. The public gave you the sales tax. Your predecessor said they wouldn't. The city's predecessor said they wouldn't. And here we are. I don't know why you don't want to put it before the public. I mean, I've heard all of you speak tonight. Mr. Rainey, I appreciate what you had to say, and I agree with a lot of what you had to say. My friend Corky, I agree with him. I'm not saying we don't have a need, but you have to vote on this every year in the future and renew it. And if we could replace enough of you, it might not get renewed in another couple of years or 6 years. So I just want to mention that, why do you not trust the public? You're not going to collect the money any sooner by putting it on the Quorum Court to vote this. You can get it on the election in November. You can put a date on it. And if the public votes for it, you've got it. And it'll be a permanent tax. It won't be one subject to someone's whim. I'm objecting that you don't let the public vote. You're not going to get your money any sooner. You won't get it one day sooner. Our tax collector back there, when you all put the millage in, she'll put it on the bills in 25 that go out, and you'll collect your money over the next 10 months. I do think the 911 center presents an interesting question here. If we consolidate, there should be more money. Daryl, I don't know the answer. You don't know the answer, I don't think. There should be more money coming into if it's consolidated. I question, and I do believe, Corky, we have a lot of calls, but a lot of calls don't require someone to come out or don't always have to go out. I think the dangerous calls, if you have domestic violence, wait for backup. That's an administrative decision. I would expect many counties around the United States to do that. The firemen, the volunteer fire department, when they go out to a call, the first person on the scene does not run into the burning home to save the pets and the people. He assesses the situation and waits for additional. I'm also concerned about how, with a nominal population growth in the county and in the city, we have about 100,000 now all combined, was much the same 10 years ago, but our budgets have increased a couple 100% when inflation was 45. And when you say your ticket was $23 and some cents, there's already about 12% tax on that, and we're already paying this year, or will be, if you already have, your property tax assessments went way up, so people are paying about 25% more. Now, Judge Williams, he said, that a lot of people wouldn't have to pay anything because of homestead. And that's right, but the poor people he's talking about, most of them don't own homes. So those homes are owned by investors like myself. And I rent them out. And I pass every darn penny of it along. And I mark it up for my profit too. So I'm asking you all to give some consideration. I agree with what you're trying to do. Put it before the people. And if you don't believe it'll pass, then you better market better. I admire you, Judge. You marketed to, and I've polled some of these guys, they're all pretty much for what you want to do. Okay? I just want to tell you that. And you did a good job. Corky did a good job. Sheriff did a good job. Everybody does a good job. But time you trust the public. Promises back 25 years ago or so, and here we are. And you'll have to vote on it every year, you or your successors. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I do believe that if we look at our growth in revenue and our sales tax over the years, perhaps we're putting our priorities in the wrong places and spending money in some places that we could save money. Maybe we don't need something that we have. We'll never have enough. Enough is never enough. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Yes, sir.
I'm Bob Driggers, number 3 Stonegate. And I think I promised all of you I wouldn't speak to you unless George did. But George has spoken to you, and matter of fact, he threatened you with your jobs. I'm not going to threaten anybody. I don't think that's appropriate because every one of you are pretty smart. I seldom agree with Larry Rainey on anything, but I agreed with everything he said today, and with Thomas, and with Mr. Myers. And I'm impressed with you guys and what you do. You brought up an item in your comments, Judge, about something happened that's abnormal. And it took about 6 hours for the sheriff's department to take care of it. Pretty sure you're talking about my subdivision. Well, I told some people at the Tea Party recently, I wasn't as concerned for myself because I lived in a gated subdivision and we've got cameras everywhere. We even have an ex-policeman from Memphis that patrols on his golf cart. But it happened. It happened down the street from me, and it was 6 hours before I could leave home because the street was blocked. Crime's not getting better on its own if we don't do something about it. And I think you folks are the only ones that can do it, because think about it. If you live in the city of Hot Springs, you have a police force. But yet if you put this to a vote, those people are going to be voting, are they not? You already have your police force. Why would you vote for someone in the county? The people at the village, they're going to be voting. They have a police force. Unless you can carve those people out and let only the people in the county, not in the 2 cities that we have, vote, it's dead. You might as well forget it. And I think blood will be on your hands if you do. So bite the bullet. Go ahead and pass this thing. Let's get it going. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment? Not seeing any hands, I'll go back to the committee. From everything that's been said tonight, I think that the chair is now looking for a motion from the committee on sending this up or not sending it up to the Quorum Court so that it can be discussed in both finance and then move on to the Quorum Court.
I move it to full Quorum Court.
Second.
Thomas, you made the motion?
Second.
Larry, excuse me. I was
Esther,
distracted.
You seconded Esther? I'm just, pardon me, Jimmy, I'm sorry. Esther seconded. I'm just trying to make sure I have my notes right. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, Larry, I was distracted thinking about something Bob had said, and I said something to Esther, and you started your question and got a motion, and that motion was to what?
The motion is to send it up. It's a good question. Thomas, your motion is to do what? Send it up to the Quorum Court?
Yes, sir.
Very
Not
good.
to finance.
Well,
It'll go to finance.
it has to go to finance in order to go to the Quorum Court.
Correct.
So,
For our purposes,
So we will
we're just sending it
will
up.
still have another committee discussion on this at finance. Okay, thank you.
I am correct in that, aren't I, Judge? It'll have to go before the Finance Committee and be discussed there before it moves on.
So,
Okay.
do we want it to go to the finance from here, or we want it to go to full quorum? I think it could go on to finance, and, I mean, to full quorum, and finance do what they do.
I'm sorry? All right, so you want to send it up to
I'll rescind my
finance?
motion and send it up to finance.
All right. The motion is to send it up to finance for discussion. Has everyone got that? All right. All the committee members who are in favor of sending it up to finance signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone oppose, same sign? Jimmy,
Larry, not opposed. This was public health, safety, welfare voting, correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So you're not opposed to
No,
it?
no,
Okay.
I voted yes.
Very good. The ayes have it. It'll be sent up to the Finance Committee for further discussion. Is there anything else on the agenda this evening for anybody? I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for coming out.